I made this video a year ago and still find it a shame that the discussion on a Minister for Men, which segued into the topic of male suicide, was overshadowed by the controversy caused by Laurence Fox's reaction to the Politics Live segment. Later, he lost his GB News job because of the vile stuff he said about Ava Santina.
We're going to change direction and talk about Geoff's book. Or the sort of subject matter, The British Bloke Decoded, which tries broadly to explain the behaviour of Britain's husbands, dads and brothers.
It was a shame because the original discussion bared scrutiny.
Now, it's quite a light-hearted book.
From banter to man flu, everything finally explained.
So first, Geoff, tell us more about the book.
And most blokes don't really have a huge amount of power in their own lives. They're sort of trying to be dependable, loving people for the people in their lives. They might not be the best at remembering important dates or even the names of their nephews and nieces, you know, like. But I think that it's an occasional rubbishness coming from a good place. So what I've tried to do in this book is just try to explain some of the more baffling behaviour of men, like, you know, the fact that we don't put on sun cream when we're on holiday, you know, maybe till the third day. Say, is there something deeper? And I think that they're light-hearted subjects like that, but there's also, you know, like loneliness and what happens to male friendships as we age.
Well,
this is where it all gets a little deeper.
Well, and when it comes to the serious points, we might come back to the application of sun cream later on. But in the Times, this headline, Rishi Sunak urged to appoint Minister for Men, suggested by a Conservative MP. New role would champion issues such as reducing male suicide. Would that be something you'd be in favour of?
So, as this goes on, I think Geoff Norcott treads a very fine line very well here at wanting to acknowledge the problems thrown at him, but respectfully bringing the discussion back to the topic of male suicide. Let's see how he does.
Well, what's interesting about that is the hostility it sometimes faces whenever it comes up. I saw a programme where there was like a feminist academic and a Lib Dem MP, and they were so hostile to this idea. And I thought, if you flipped those things, i.e. that it's the biggest cause of death for men under 50 is suicide, men are less likely to go to the doctors, you know, men are less likely to maintain friendships. If that was for women, we'd often look at, well, why is society making that happen? Whereas with men, the argument is often, why are they doing that to themselves?
OK, fair enough. And he also says this about the idea of a Minister for Men.
So I'm not, like, totally wedded to the idea, but the hostility towards the idea, I find it instructive.
Ava?
I think that it feeds into the culture a little bit, this Minister for Men argument. Like, in my mind, I think there should be a Minister for Mental Health, which would be all-encompassing. I mean, you've got something like 7 million children waiting for prescriptions for mental health at the moment. It's a crisis that's endemic throughout the country, not specific to men.
Ava Evans is the unshaggable feminist, so labelled by Laurence Fox. It's a shame that it isn't considered that there could be both. And obviously, just don't give it to Jonathan Gullis or Lee Anderson.
And I think, you know, a lot of ministers kind of bandy this about to sort of, I'm sorry, but make an enemy out of women. I think, not you, and I don't think your book is.
I don't
Sunak.
accept that. I don't think it is to make an enemy. If we looked at during COVID, men were literally more likely to die from COVID. And I don't really want to cast myself as a meninist or one of these guys from the manosphere, because that's not who I am. But I do find it interesting that sometimes the arguments tend to throw it back.
But who was doing all the work during COVID? You know, a lot of the time, if you looked into people's households, it was the women who were taking on the laundry, the school care, all of that.
I'm not disputing any of that. What I'm saying that there are specific issues that men face that might warrant specific attention.
And I totally agree. If society is to function better addressing why many men are so angry, lonely and violent, it can only be a good thing. Making life better for all should be society's #1 aim. So playing men off against women, in my opinion, is a zero-sum game.
I mean, literally, the biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide. That is an arresting statistic, and if that doesn't warrant specific attention, mental health is an umbrella issue.
I have to say that is also because women are unsuccessful. That is a lot of feeds into that statistic.
But it feels like, it just doesn't feel like you've got any space for this idea that men might have unique challenges that face them. And the problem is, even as I'm saying this, in my mind, it's like I've got out the violin, and I don't want to be.
Read the book.
I don't want to be this guy, because that's part of the problem. Is because you're encouraged on one level is men need to talk about their problems more, and then the moment you do it, you're like, all right, but not quite so often and not quite so loud. So like you say, the book is more light-hearted than that, but it certainly, you know, goes around these issues.
Francis?
I think think that we have to change the fact that women still earn 15% less than men.
But no one's saying you can't do both.
No, exactly.
We can multitask.
Exactly. I agree.
Can you multitask?
Well, not me personally, obviously. But
So again, it comes back to comparing women to men. Instead of just agreeing, yes, we should have a Minister for Men and a Minister for Mental Health as well. But now I'm going to argue from my political belief in that capitalism is doing very few people any favours. The effects of capitalism in terms of the increase in mental health issues and loneliness means a government that is run by a party that believes corporations will help and solve all our problems means a Minister for Men and one for mental health will probably achieve very little.
But I don't think that those are reasons to not address these problems,
No, I agree,
Francis.
but most women experience sexual harassment.
But I totally accept that. I don't understand what but it's happening again with this conversation where I'm talking about the specific issues that men face, and you're quoting other issues which I do not contest on any level.
Geoff still struggles to have a discussion about male suicide.
Ended up discussing other things which are completely valid, certainly in terms of my industry, and I understand why those discussions are live discussions. But the idea that we can't have both those discussions, I genuinely find that odd, Francis. I'm happy to talk about the problems in my industry. I'm happy to stand and say, that in comedy there are specific problems in and around this area.
Because there is a power imbalance.
But that's what, and I've had that discussion on my podcast and elsewhere. I'm happy to say that as many times as people want me to say it. But just in this small section of the show, I thought we were going to just mention about some of the specific problems that men face. Men were more likely to die from COVID. If that had been flipped, we would have looked at why is this? This is a tragedy. We'd have looked at all the underlying reasons. But it just wasn't really a discussion. And I'm just interested in why it wasn't a discussion.
Well, that'll be for the next show.
Yeah, I bet that will happen. Click here to find out why men aren't happy.